Okay, so I continue to watch and observe the drive-by media. It's so abundantly clear what's going on. Trump again blames both sides in Charlottesville. And for that, we have to hate Trump, because both sides are not responsible. Trump then had the audacity to say that both sides are committing violence. How dare he? Our precious leftist counter-terrorist supporters, they're not violent. So says the Democrat Party. So says the drive-by media. Folks, we're being lied to like we have never been lied to before, and it is just getting worse. And it's an effort that's finding no obstruction. Nobody is trying to stop this. The left has a clear path to get away with whatever they want to get away with. There's only one guy trying to stand up to all this. That's Trump. And when people see what happens to him, they cower in fear. They retreat to the corners and they join the left to one degree or another. Trump again blames both sides in Charlottesville. How dare he? Well, both sides are to blame. It's common sense. There is violence on the left. There is abundant violence on the left. How many times do I have to keep reminding people? Ferguson, Missouri, that was a bunch of leftist protesters. Baltimore, Maryland, a bunch of leftist protesters. At the University of California, Berkeley, anytime a conservative shows up to speak, what the hell happens? And why do the cops stand down every time, or almost every time? The idea that there's no violence on the left, the idea that and by this fine people business, that really did send them over the edge in the media when Trump said there were fine people on both sides. Trump was not saying there are fine people among white supremacists or the Nazis or whoever else, the Klan. Trump was saying there are fine people among those who object to taking down these statues. That's another thing. Taking down the statues. We got to do it. There's no alternative now. We need to take down every statue the left wants to take down. And many on the right are joining with that sentiment. Let's take down American history. Let's rip it down. Let's get it down. Let's agree with the premise that American history is repugnant and it's evil. And let's get rid of all the signs of it. Well, where does that stop? Trump asked that question yesterday, too, and people had a cow over that. It doesn't stop, is the point. When we are not being given an honest presentation of who these leftist protesters are and what their real objective is, and the left will do everything it can to keep that hidden, folks. I think the way to bring all this to a screeching halt, interestingly, is to highlight and expose who the left is, who these protesters are, who's buying them, who's paying for them, who's giving them their marching orders, no pun intended, and highlighting the violence that they engage in. The left doesn't want that light shining on them. That would be one way of ending this. You can tell that right now. They're getting away free and clear with the idea that their protesters are clean and pure as the wind-driven snow, and that they are nonviolent little snowflakes and flowers, and they're just so hurt and pained by the stress and the torture of America's past, and they simply want to clean it up and want to be helpful and healthy and so. And of course, the people stand in the way to mean-spirited, hateful, bigot zealots. Is how the right-wing, quote-unquote, right-wing protesters are portrayed. And as such, the left has a free road, a clear road, and now they are being granted moral authority. Even Mitt Romney has come out and sided with the leftist protesters. Looking for the exact quote here. I've got so many pieces of paper, and I purposely put Romney at the end of it because I was trying not to focus attention on certain people at certain times, and now I can't find it, but it'll surface here eventually. Basically, he said, they're not the same. These two sides are not the same. One side is racist, bigoted, Nazi. The other opposes racism and bigotry. Well, there's Mr. Republican. And here, Mr. Republican Mitt Romney is actually claiming that the leftist protesters are not racist and they're not bigoted, that they're opposing racism and bigotry. They're two morally different universes, and the protesters on the left have moral superiority. Now, does he really think this, or is this just something that he says in order to keep the flack flying at him? Mitt, have you ever taken a gander at YouTube? Have you ever taken a look at what this Antifa group does? Have you ever seen some of the violence they have perpetrated at G20 conventions or World Trade Organization rallies in Seattle? I mean, they're all over the place, and they are violent. It's not just that they're violent, they are demanding. Just plug in Antifa YouTube and take a look and see what you get. Moral superiority. So Mitt Romney is defending Antifa, defending the left, and a lot of people on the right are. And I understand why they do so. But what it results in is no pushback. The Washington Post today has run an op-ed from, NDB Connolly, the Herbert Baxter Adams Associate Professor at Johns Hopkins University. He's the author of A World More Concrete, Real Estate and the Remaking of Jim Crow, South Florida. And this op-ed in the Washington Post, essentially, here's the headline: Charlottesville shows that liberalism cannot defeat white supremacy, only direct action can. It's time to stop relying on markets and multiculturalism and start engaging in real activism. Throw rocks, not paper. So here is a professor at Johns Hopkins writing in the Washington Post that liberalism is powerless against the Klan. Liberalism is powerless against the Nazis. Liberalism is powerless against white supremacists, and so violence is it. Violence is the only solution. And the editors of the Washington Post found no reason not to publish this. Daniel Greenfield, writing at Front Page Magazine, arrests the editor of the Washington Post. This is inciting violent riots. This should have consequences. Charlottesville racistly. You know, I saw this earlier in the week, and I didn't know what to make of this. But this is from Breitbart. Charlottesville racist leader was former Occupy activist and an Obama supporter. And this comes actually from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is another hate group. You know, the Democrat Party and the American left is the largest collection of rage and hate in America today. And that is what's so maddening, to see them portrayed as morally superior and angelic and innocent and nonviolent by the drive-by media. It's nothing could be further from the truth. Violence follows everywhere Antifa goes. And whatever they called themselves before Antifa, Occupy Wall Street or whatever they were before that. Anyway, the Southern Poverty Law Center reports that Jason Kessler, the organizer of last Saturday's white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, is rumored to be a former Occupy Wall Street activist and supporter of Barack Obama. The Southern Poverty Law Center is often partisan and overzealous in targeting hate groups, lumping legitimate conservative organizations together with actual extremists. But this is interesting. The Southern Poverty Law Center says rumors abound on white nationalist forums that Jason Kessler's ideological pedigree before 2016 was less than pure and seemed to point to an involvement in the Occupy movement and past support for President Obama. At one recent speech in favor of Charlottesville's status as a sanctuary city, Jason Kessler live-streamed himself as an attendee, questioned him and apologized for an undisclosed spat during his apparent involvement with Occupy. Kessler appeared visibly perturbed by the woman's presence and reminders of their past association. Somebody ran up to, hey, I know you. You were in the Occupy movement. And they say he seemed very nervous about this. The Southern Poverty Law Center report goes on to say that Kessler's right-wing views only became public in November of 2016. Now, this is very curious to me. Let's say what the Southern Poverty Law Center is not saying here. What if this guy genuinely was an Obama supporter? This is the leader of the white supremacist march in Charlottesville, the leader, the organizer. What if he was an Obama supporter in 86? And what if he was Occupy Wall Street? Now all of a sudden this guy is leading this effort in Charlottesville? How does that happen? How does one go through a 180-degree shift in ideological commitment in less than a year? Well, I was going to say, maybe one doesn't. Maybe he still is an Occupy Wall Streeter, and maybe he still is a Barack Hussein O supporter. And by the way, you know who still lives in Washington, D.C.? Barack Hussein O. And you know who has said multiple times that he's going to be keeping track on things? I think we should consider the possibility that the Clintons and the Obamas and the top-down Democrat apparatus, including the media, is very much involved in this because, like I said yesterday, folks, all of this is organized. None of this is spontaneous. The drive-bys want you to think that what happened Saturday was a bunch of skinhead Nazi white supremacist Klansmen showed up in Charlottesville, Virginia. And just because they showed up, they're reprehensible, they're reprobates, they're creeps, they're human debris, they're scum, we got to get rid of them. And so what happened was spontaneously a bunch of gentle and nonviolent, freedom-loving, anti-racist, gently great Americans showed up to stop them. And the Nazis and the Klan and the white supremacists, they just mowed these poor people down. They just rolled all over them. And they killed one of them. And they were firing at them. And it was just, that's what they want you to believe happened, which is not what happened. Whoever they are, these lunatics that were out there marching had a permit. The other side didn't. There was nothing spontaneous about the opposition. There was nothing innocent about the opposition. The result achieved here is exactly that which was hoped for and sought. Now, folks, you must understand, it is highly controversial for me to say what I just said. I am painting a bullseye on myself by doing this, by not acknowledging the media version of this, by claiming that I don't buy any of this, by claiming that this is all organized and it has a purpose and it's political, that it's not rooted in the anger over slavery, it's not rooted in racism and bigotry. That's how they attract the crowd, but that's not what is really motivating the leaders of this movement. This just makes it easy for them to attract a crowd, primarily of college-educated young people who've already been propagandized with all this. But the objectives are far, far, far more reaching than just erasing the vestiges of slavery and so forth, which in many people's minds we've done. There isn't a movement in America today to reenact slavery. There isn't a popular movement. There's not a desire on the part of anybody to go back to that era. And yet if you listen to the Occupy side or the Antifa, you would think that that's what they're trying to stop, that all these monuments and everything actually represent a desire to go back to the days of slavery and bigotry and the Nazis running the show. Nobody wants to do that. So I think the American people are once again being fed a script. The daily soap opera, this is it, and the president fell right into it by telling people what he actually thought or thinks of all of this. And this is where we are. Anyway, so now the Washington Post is running a piece saying that intellectuals and ideas and markets and words and stuff cannot stop the Nazis, cannot stop the Klan. No, none of our usual tools can work. We must resort to the rocks, which is a call for violence. Quick time out, and we come back and resume with your calls. Oh, one other thing. I didn't finish the thought. Trump was not saying that there are fine people among the Nazis and the Klan and the racists. He was saying that there are fine people on both sides, fine people who object to these statues being torn down. They're fine people in that group. And he's not wrong about that. The argument over the statues, that's a legitimate argument, and you can have that argument and that discussion without there being racism and bigotry and Nazism tied in. But the left will not allow that. Those statues have to come down. There is no discussion. And folks, there's no end to it. Just like affirmative action was never going to end, we were never going to be able to make amends for whatever those transgressions were. Same thing here. This will never end. There is no period of moment in time in the future where the left-wing protesters say, okay, now you've acknowledged what you did wrong. We got what we want. That day never comes. They'll never stop. You can't appease them, no matter how many members of the conservative right join with them and start echoing whatever their sayings and thoughts. It will not stop. It's only going to continue, in fact. We got to take a break, as I said, back after this.